Erasmus-Descartes. And it was established for the purpose of promoting bilateral cooperation to meet the challenges of tomorrow. Our topic today is a challenge whose urgency could not be more pressing, as evidenced by the fact that it came in for significant attention at this year's COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. Our topic is, as you know, sustainable aviation. And at 2.5%, air transport's share of overall global CO2 emissions is at present relatively modest, but it is scheduled to soar 300% by 2050 if we don't take action now. Transforming this hard to decarbonize sector is crucial, but it won't be easy. This is a long haul flight, not a puddle jump. And the aim of our conference today is to ask how French-Dutch cooperation can make this happen and make it happen fast. This past spring, during high-level talks between President Macron and Prime Minister Rutte, the two countries agreed to establish a public-private innovation pact, focusing among other areas on development of hydrogen-powered aircraft, as well as hydrogen infrastructure at airports. Our conference will explore the implications of that pledge and ask, what are the crucial prerequisites for success? Who must do what to foster effective collaboration to accelerate hydrogen-based aviation? Just a quick word on our program, following greetings from our hosts and from key stakeholders, including Air France-KLM and Airbus. Our award session will feature students conducting groundbreaking research on sustainable aeronautics. The imperative and promise of innovation will also be spotlighted in our keynote from the CFO of Europe's first all-electric airline. After that, our first panel session will take a deeper dive on French-Dutch cooperation in zero-emission aviation, exploring the societal, economic, technological, and scientific challenges involved in transitioning to zero-emission aviation, and in particular to hydrogen. That will be followed by a research talk on modeling environmental inefficiencies in French-Dutch flights. And then after a short break, our second panel will focus on the technical, legal, and regulatory prerequisites to establish a hydrogen ecosystem at airports. And then we will close with high-level reflections on where we go from here. So that's what's in store, and because exchange is what this forum is all about, we are also eager to hear from you, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll take a few audience questions at the end of our panel sessions. And now it is my great honor to hand over to our hosts, beginning with His Excellency, the Ambassador of the Royal Kingdom of the Netherlands to France, Jan Versteeg. The floor is yours. Welcome, Excellency.
Mesdames et messieurs, chers collègues, merci beaucoup d'être venus. C'est un grand plaisir pour moi de vous souhaiter la bienvenue à cette conférence, cette 20e édition de la conférence Erasmus-Descartes, ici à ce lieu à la fois élégant et symbolique. Gasten uit Nederland, ook een warm welkom hier op deze plek, deze bijzondere plek in Parijs voor deze 20e Erasmus-Descartes conferentie. Dank dat u gekomen bent. Ik zeg dat speciaal ook tegen de nieuwe ambassadeur in Frankrijk, François à la Brune, die ook een bijzondere inspanning doet om zich het Nederlands eigen te maken. Dus François, veel dank daarvoor en een speciaal welkom. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now continue in what is the language of international aviation and various other business sectors. It's sort of a lingua franca in which we understand each other, which has some similarities to English, and somehow it works internationally. As I just said, this is the 20th edition already of the Erasmus-Descartes Conference. It's a conference that is organized by the French Embassy in the Netherlands in a first year, and then in the second year by the Dutch Embassy here in Paris. And the aim of it is really to bring together different people, high-level participants from public organizations, private parties, science, but also young talents, to exchange thoughts and strengthen bilateral cooperation. And before I go to the subject of today, I just wanted to pause briefly at the name of the conference. I think nobody will doubt that Erasmus and Descartes are two of the most prominent thinkers in modern Western history. It's fascinating to see that both of these great philosophers have had their footsteps in both countries. Erasmus lived a couple of years in Paris and in other European countries. He was a true European. And Descartes lived for about 20 years in Holland. I think our world would look different if they hadn't been there, if they hadn't existed, if they hadn't benefited from the debate and the freedom in the two countries at the time. It says something also about the proximity between the intellectual proximity between the two countries that existed already 4 or 5 centuries ago. And I think that proximity has seen its little ups and downs in the course of its growth, has seen a little ups and downs in the course of the past centuries. But I think at this moment we're in a particularly high moment. I think we both realize, France and the Netherlands, that we're very close, that we have in many respects the same way of thinking, the same approach, and that we should benefit from that. And it's in that context that we're also organizing this series of conferences and that we're here together. Then on today's subject, this year's subject, sustainable aviation. I think that everybody here in the room knows that there is quite a strong connection between the aviation sectors of the two countries. And that's not only because we share a major global airline, but also that because we have a number of famous scientific institutions in aviation in both countries, like ISA Supero in Toulouse and the Technical University in Delft. Our business sector invests and innovates heavily. Within Europe, France is the number 2 and the Netherlands is the number 5 investor in sustainable aviation. And I'm proud to open this conference, which has been announced by President Macron and Prime Minister Rutte in March last year when they met here in Paris in the Élysée Palace. I think it's also a demonstration of the efforts that both governments and the business sector in both countries invest in innovative and sustainable solutions at large in general, but especially also in the aviation sector. And we had for the after movie for this conference a little interview, the ambassador and I think we probably have said more or less the same thing, Francois, that we do see that we're facing a number of challenges of a global scale that are impossible to solve just by ourselves. And that is why collaboration is an imperative, not only for the Netherlands, also for France. And we prefer to do that in a European context, which also has a direct link to the current geopolitical situation. So we think we're on our way to make important progress. Our goal is to drastically reduce climate emissions from civil aviation. Dutch airports and domestic air traffic will no longer emit CO2 in 2050. Today's conference is absolutely aimed to contribute to that goal by collaboration. The only thing that is left for me now is to thank a number of people. First, the Aéro-Club de France for having us here. Second, the Réseau Franco-Néerlandais and the NAFIC, which help each edition of the conference with the preparations of it. Specifically, the Young Talents track is organized by them. Then, of course, I would like to thank the young talents themselves for participating, for doing this. They're giving a very inspiring example. And also the universities that are helping with that in the background. Then I would like to thank the organizing team from both the Dutch and the French embassy and the Institut Français. Specifically, I would like to thank the French embassy and the Institut Français for the pleasant cooperation organizing this year's EDC and the strong relationship we enjoy with them. We look forward to organizing more of those conferences in the future. Lastly, I would like to thank all the participants, all that are present in a panel, but also the people in the audience and online following the live stream. Thank you for helping to make this conference a success. Thank you very much.
Excellency, Ambassador Versteeg, thank you very much for those important messages and also for the reminder that intra-European mobility goes back centuries to Erasmus and Descartes. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to His Excellency, the Ambassador of France to the Netherlands, François Alabrune. Excellence, vous avez la parole.
Goedemiddag, beste Jan, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. Just a few words in the lingua franca to say that I'm very grateful for the way Jan and his team have welcomed us and have contributed to the success of this event, which is very important in our relationship. Also to say that I very much share the way he referred to the importance of Erasmus and Descartes in our relationship, and the way both were enriched by the experience of the other country, and also mentioning that both were actually facing period of revolution of the conceptions of the world in a way, and had to rethink the world. And in a way, we are also facing such a situation. So that's why this Franco-Dutch dialogue and cooperation is so important. Je voudrais aussi remercier vraiment tous ceux qui ont contribué à l'organisation de cette 20e édition et rappeler que le président Macron et le Premier ministre Mark Rutte ont décidé d'établir un dialogue bilatéral portant en particulier sur l'énergie et le climat et sont convenus de renforcer les relations et les échanges autour de l'aviation durable. D'où notre présence aujourd'hui. Nos deux pays, historiquement, la France et les Pays-Bas, font figure de pionniers et ont fait figure de pionniers dans l'histoire de l'aviation, par exemple, avec Louis Blériot et Anthony Fokker. Et aujourd'hui, nos deux pays doivent poursuivre ce chemin de l'innovation, en particulier pour rendre ce secteur climatiquement neutre. Je me réjouis donc du thème central de l'aviation durable, choisi pour ces entretiens, comme enjeu global de la transition verte. D'abord, parce que nous faisons face à l'urgence. Nous devons à la fois réduire nos dépendances et nous attaquer au changement climatique. Nos dépendances technologiques, énergétiques, nous rendent vulnérables. Et notre capacité à prendre en main notre destin dépend de notre maîtrise des technologies de demain. Avec 14% des émissions de gaz à effet de serre du secteur des transports, l'aviation doit se transformer et contribuer à l'atténuation du changement climatique. Le temps est compté et nous devons réfléchir et agir ensemble rapidement pour préparer les solutions de demain. Je me réjouis que cette conférence, Erasmus-Descartes, soit utilisée comme plateforme sur ce sujet, parce qu'elle permet d'échanger avec l'ensemble de l'écosystème sur les vols à zéro émission d'une manière interdisciplinaire. En effet, cette conférence Erasmus-Descartes présente l'avantage de pouvoir couvrir plusieurs dimensions. La première dimension, c'est une dimension politique, avec la participation aujourd'hui des deux ministres, Harbers et Clément Beaune. Et cette volonté politique, elle se traduit ces dernières années en actions concrètes à tous les niveaux. Du côté français, le président de la République a rappelé lors de son discours à la COP27 les investissements de l'État français en matière de transition écologique, 6 milliards d'euros par an, dont 2 milliards dédiés à l'adaptation. Le gouvernement néerlandais investit, lui aussi, de façon considérable en faveur de la transition durable du pays. L'Europe, quant à elle, prend part massivement pour soutenir ces efforts dans le cadre du programme Horizon Europe. 1,7 milliard sont alloués à des partenariats sur l'aviation à zéro émission. Deuxième dimension, la formation et la recherche scientifique, sans laquelle nous ne pourrions nous adapter aux défis que nous rencontrons. En France, c'est notamment grâce au groupe ISAE, réseau d'écoles d'ingénieurs aéronautiques, avec Supaéro, un acteur majeur de la filière dans la région de Toulouse. L'aéronautique constitue un secteur pertinent pour tous nos territoires, comme par exemple à Poitiers avec ENSMA et Supmeca, ici à Paris, dans les instituts de recherche technologique de Toulouse, Nantes ou Metz, sans oublier nos instituts de recherche CNRS, Onera, Cerfax, CEA, IFP Énergie Nouvelle. Aux Pays-Bas, il est impossible de dessiner la cartographie sur la recherche en aéronautique sans penser aux universités techniques de Delft et d'Eindhoven, au centre de recherche aérospatiale NLR, la faculté d'aéronautique de la TU Delft, que j'ai eu l'honneur de visiter, fait partie des meilleures institutions au monde. La troisième et dernière dimension de notre conférence d'aujourd'hui, c'est l'industrie. Les industries aéronautiques en France et aux Pays-Bas sont des acteurs majeurs à l'échelle de la planète, avec le leader mondial Airbus et le groupe Air France-KLM. Je remercie et salue tous les représentants des acteurs industriels pour leur contribution essentielle à ce débat. Nos deux groupements de l'industrie aéronautique et spatiale, le GIFAS et le NAG, fédèrent ces acteurs d'excellence et seront au cœur de la transformation de cet écosystème. Enfin, pour réussir l'acceptation de ces changements profonds par les acteurs de ce système sera essentielle et passera par la sensibilisation, la formation des personnels de l'ensemble de la chaîne, mais également des utilisateurs. Avant de terminer, la tradition veut que je dévoile le thème de la prochaine conférence qui aura lieu aux Pays-Bas. Et dans la continuité du thème choisi cette année, nous souhaitons faire porter le débat sur la maîtrise des technologies de demain pour favoriser la souveraineté technologique européenne. Aussi, j'ai le grand plaisir de vous annoncer que la thématique de la conférence Erasmus-Descartes 2023 portera sur l'ingénierie quantique. Ce domaine, hautement stratégique, devrait permettre à l'humanité de faire des sauts technologiques, voire quantiques, pour le bien de l'humanité. Et la France et les Pays-Bas doivent unir leurs talents pour faire progresser la science à l'image des découvertes début des années 80 de notre compatriote lauréat du prix Nobel Alain Aspect, dont la démonstration a été achevée par les équipes de la TU Delft. Je vous souhaite à toutes et à tous des échanges fructueux. Je forme le vœu d'une contribution significative de votre mobilisation, à commencer par celle de nos jeunes talents. Dank u wel.
Merci beaucoup, Excellence, Ambassador à la Brune, and thank you for that exciting announcement. Quantum couldn't be a more interesting topic, except perhaps sustainable aviation. But thank you very much for sharing that news with us. And thank you also for the reminder about the great importance of industry's innovation in bringing sustainable aviation forward. And the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, numerous stakeholders have been mapping out very ambitious goals and plans. And here, French-Dutch cooperation is absolutely leading the way. It was mentioned before that one of the largest European airline groups is, in fact, Air France-KLM. And it has played a pioneering role in testing sustainable aviation fuels. We now hear from the company leaders, Group CEO Ben Smith, as well as Air France CEO Anne Rigail, and KLM CEO Marianne Rintel, who sent us this video of their vision for the future.
For a few years now, our world is facing unprecedented crises from COVID-19 to energy cuts. In that context, the sustainability transition is one of the main challenges of our industry for the coming years.
The general public is urging airlines to adapt themselves responsibly, and we are conscious of our proactive role in that transition. Air France, KLM, and our entire group are committed to a fair environmental transition at the heart of a new sustainable and inclusive travel sector.
To do so, we analyze the change in our customers' behavior and provide a more sustainable travel experience. We are committing on a number of key objectives, reducing our CO2 emissions per passenger kilometer by 30% by 2030 compared to 2019. A minimum of 10% of SAF by 2030 and achieving a net zero CO2 emissions by 2050.
In that particular context, Air France-KLM is committed to decarbonize its activities. We have named our entire sustainability ambition Destination Sustainability.
This strategy is based on three main pillars. Fleet modernization, where we still expect aircraft technology improvements, the employment of sustainable aviation fuel on a larger scale, and improvement of our operational efficiency.
Hydrogen is also one of the solutions we need to design the future of aviation. Indeed, SAF and hydrogen will remain as two complementary sectors, with hydrogen helping to reduce the pressure on demand for biomass-based SAF.
Today, most of the hydrogens are produced in a process involving coal and natural gas that does not limit CO2 emissions. In the future, we would like hydrogen to be fully produced from renewable and low-carbon energy sources.
In that matter, Air France-KLM has been a leader in the use of SAF and research and development for hydrogen solutions.
In 2021, KLM operated the world's first commercial flight with synthetic fuel produced in the Netherlands. As we will discuss this afternoon, hydrogen can be used to produce synthetic fuels and to power aircraft. It will play an important role in the transition of aviation.
In order to reach net zero emission by 2050, we are working on all fronts to reduce our impact on the environment. The road to sustainable aviation will not be easy, but the transition of the aviation sector is underway.
At Air France-KLM, this commitment is reflected in the continuous efforts we make together and every day to prepare for the future.
Give them a round of applause even though they're not with us. Thank you so much. And finally, in this opening session, we hear from Airbus, which has committed to supporting the development and the use of sustainable aviation fuels. Following up on those high-level talks that have been mentioned between President Macron and Prime Minister Rutte, an innovation mission that brought together representatives from business, government, and research visited the Airbus site at Toulouse to explore opportunities for bilateral French-Dutch cooperation. With us is Airbus Executive Vice President Wouter van Wersch, and you have the floor. It's a great honor to have you with us. Please.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here today and to share some thoughts on the world and on sustainability. And I'm actually very happy not to be invited for the quantum one, because I'm not sure I have a lot of things to say. Huh? I'm a bit more expert here. It's also a great moment to have this Franco-Dutch cooperation and a proof of the working together. You know, I'm from Holland, my wife is from France, and I've got 3 amazing kids. So I can tell you the cooperation can produce some fantastic things. So my journey at Airbus started 2.5 years ago, and in my first meeting with our CEO, so Guillaume Faury, I had a long list of actions on the list. And before I left the room, he said one thing, and Wouter, if you could do something with these blue guys in Amsterdam, that would be great. So that was the start of my personal mission in trying to get even Airbus and the Netherlands closer together. I think we've done a great job with many of you in the room since then, and the progress has been quite amazing. I was with Guillaume this morning, actually, 2.5 years later, and he said, Wouter, this is fantastic. We want to do more. So that's really a message. Great cooperation today, but a lot of ideas of more things we could do together. So in the next 10 minutes, I would like to give you a little bit of our thoughts and, on sustainability, and especially what sustainability means for our company. So we have been driving our company through innovation since we have been created more than 50 years ago. And sustainability is today a key pillar of our strategy, and it's fully part of our mission. Our mission is to pioneer sustainable aviation for a safe and united world. So that's really our purpose, and that's what we're doing day in, day out to contribute to the planet. Protecting the planet is centered in our mission and our commitment to deliver clean aviation and aerospace for the future. And we relentlessly work on improving our products, but also moving the ecosystem to achieve this goal. So all the aircraft that are coming today from our production lines, they are bringing improvements. 50% less noise and 25% less CO2 emissions. So that's a lot. And many airlines around the region, KLM, Transavia, Air France, of course, they are bringing new aircraft online in order to reduce their impact. So this is the first thing that we do. We have also committed as a company on the ambitious science-based targets in terms of the CO2. And we have defined a clear path to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. And we are also, and it was mentioned by Anne in the video, we have also set a stick in the ground and committed in getting the first zero-emission aircraft, hydrogen aircraft, by 2035. So internally, we're of course doing a lot of things. We are constantly improving our environmental performance of our operations. We are developing a circular model across our value chain to optimize the use of resources. But I think one thing is important. We can't address sustainability without prosperity. At Airbus, we help societies to prosper, to be safe, but also to connect economies and enable trade. And I think that's a fundamental thing that we, as a supplier of aircraft, but especially our customers, are doing. They're bringing a lot of prosperity and activity to each of the countries. We are, of course, committed to be competitive, but we also need to be profitable, because that gives us the financial means to invest and to look at what are the future technologies that will help us to get what we call our license to operate. Because if we don't bring clean aviation, Airbus will disappear. So it's a no option for us, and we've really put it at the center of our strategy. So globally, we all know aviation brings, it represents about 2 to 3% of the CO2 emissions. And I think it's very important we all pull together the whole industry, the suppliers, the manufacturers, the governments, the regulators, investors, in order to have a joint effort to reach this net zero by 2050. Today, the biggest impact on the environment is definitely the greenhouse gases, and especially the CO2. So we recently committed to use and to assess the operation of our company, but also of the products that we sell to our customers, using SBTi, some of you might know, which is today acknowledged to be really the gold standard in CO2 target setting methodology. So you know, in SBTi, there are different parts. Without getting too technical, there's scope 1, scope 2. That's all the emissions that are linked to our own manufacturing process, development. So let's say the operating of Airbus as a company. Scope 3 is the emissions that are generated by products that we produce by our customers. So generally speaking, everybody focuses on a small part, but we've decided to be very transparent and to address the whole value chain. So not only what we do, but also what our customers do, which has been a revolution, and none of the other companies, and especially some of our nice competitors, do this. But I think we have to be transparent, and we have to be very clear about what our markets and our products are doing. So we're really looking at this. We've already showed a lot of substantial progress, and we will continue to monitor this in the years to come to show what we are doing. Of course, all this is to make sure that we as a company are doing the right things, but also helping our customers like Air France, KLM, and all the other airlines to be more successful and to have less impact on the environment. So as a company, we're also pursuing a lot of opportunities, projects and investments internally in order to improve our production sites, the way we transport, and our other activities. We are today committing that by 2024, 100% of our energy used as a company will be sustainable, will be renewable, and low carbon electricity will be used. So that's a big statement, and we're working towards this. This is what we do in Europe, but we are planning to do this also in other parts of the world where we are active. We've of course introduced, biomass for heating, lighting. We're using LEDs. So we're also doing all the smaller things that we can do to limit our impact. We are also committed to use sustainable aviation fuel. Sustainable aviation fuel is a key way to achieve net zero. It was mentioned also in the video. And we're really trying to help develop this market. We are developing funds. We are investing as an OEM in a number of funds to help SAF grow, because to reduce the emissions of the wide-body long-haul flights, SAF is today the only feasible option. So we've been using SAF internally since 2019 within our own operations. You know, we have an Airbus airline actually, which is called Beluga. You might have seen these amazing aircraft flying around, and that are bringing wings and big components from the various sites we have in the region. So we are using SAF for all these internal flights, but we are also starting to use more and more SAF for the delivery flights, for new customers, and really trying to engage as much as possible on this part. So actually, since that time, I'm not only talking about Airbus in the commercial aircraft, but you know, we also do helicopters, and we do also defense and space, and they are also doing all their internal activities and internal flights using SAF. So in 2016, we actually became the first aircraft manufacturer to offer also this possibility to our customers. And since then, we have delivered already more than 90 flights, 90 aircraft with the SAF. So to define the future, huge investments are needed. Today, in Airbus, we invest about 2 billion a year purely on R&D and on what needs to be done to develop the breakthrough technologies for the future. So that, of course, we need a lot of resources. COVID has been a tough time, to be honest. We have used all the funds we had to survive as a company without any state support, so that was good. But, of course, the money we had to invest in future technologies had gone, so now we have to rebuild this. But that's a big focus. So we are convinced that aviation is on a very credible path to reach the target, but the next decade will definitely increasingly see new innovations in terms of fuel-efficient planes, so that's what we're doing, constantly improving the performance of the existing aircraft, but also in terms of air traffic management. There's a lot of improvements to be brought there, and as I mentioned already, sustainable aviation fuels. So every day that passes is a day that is lost, so we really have to be going very, very fast. So if I just want to mention quickly on the zero-emission aircraft, I think that's a very relevant one. So we've said that in 2035 we would have our first the hydrogen plane existing. This is a lot of the hydrogen technology. So burning hydrogen in a gas engine is not difficult, but doing this on an aircraft which is flying high, which is going far away, is a challenge. We are putting a lot of effort into this. I think the discussions with the Netherlands is key, and we are really keen to get the Dutch community inside this plan. We've had a very strong cooperation with many of you, as I already mentioned. We've signed an MOU with NAG some years ago. We signed recently the Flying Vision Sustainable Aviation Cooperation with Delft, with NLR, Schiphol, KLM, and Airbus. And we are convinced that there is much more to be done together in this sector. So I think from my perspective, aviation is a key sector because it brings a lot. I think the relationship between France and the Netherlands is improving every day. We are fully committed to do more together. There's great technology, there's great talent, many of the people in the room here. So we are really keen to do more, and I'm looking forward to have many discussions with you during the sessions and later today maybe, and see how we can bring this to the next level. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Wouter van Wersch, for that ringing affirmation, both of the goal of zero-emission sustainable aviation and also of French-Dutch cooperation to get us there. We will take that message with us into our further sessions. That brings our opening session to an end, and we move straight on to our Young Talents session. And we've heard it again and again today. In a hard-to-decarbonize sector like aviation, thinking out of the box, creative ideas are going to be absolutely crucial to get us where we need to go. which is why we decided to devote this first substantive slot in the program to those who hold the future in their hands. With us are two teams of young talents, master's and PhD students in aeronautics at the universities of TU Delft and also the Institut Supérieur de l'Aéronautique et de l'Espace Isaiah Supéero in Toulouse. And under the guidance of two coaches, one specialized in aviation and the other one specialized in engineering research, the two teams have been working since Monday on a challenge, one focusing on hydrogen in aviation and one on electric flight. And in just a moment, they're going to present their findings. But first, let's take a very quick look at what the last 3 days have been like for them. Can we have the video?
Prior to the Erasmus-Descartes Conference on Sustainable Aviation, 10 young people from France and the Netherlands are working on challenges related to the topic.
Both teams consist of master and PhD students. My involvement is really to supervise them, to coach them, help them find information and to make better connections of different knowledges.
I applied for the Young Talents because I'm very interested in hydrogen aircraft. And for me, it's a great opportunity to be able to share my thoughts on the topics and have other ideas.
I'm inspired by the Young Talents program in a way that I can see that we as young students, maybe not in the industry yet, can even make an impact in the world of aviation for sustainability. And I want to inspire others by telling them that they also have a chance to do this.
Both teams worked very hard, day and night, over the past 3 days, and they were able to come up with innovative answers to these challenges.
It was a pretty intense 3 days for the teams. Nonetheless, they're looking very lively and refreshed. They are with us here, and we will now begin with the team working on electric. Their work will be presented by Alun Greve and Corneel van den Berge, both students at TU Delft. And please join me now on stage, dear presenters. So we have microphones and a clicker over here, and think of this as a pitch, if you would, meaning be short but comprehensible, less than 5 minutes if you can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The need for change in aviation is recognized across the entire industry. If adding external pressure from incentives like the Paris Agreement and other decarbonization commitments from organizations such as ICAO. With aviation contributing to 5% of total global warming and an expected doubling of flights in the next 20 years, a large change is inevitable. We are a team of 5 aerospace engineering students, and today we will explain to you how you can make sustainable aviation possible. One option for this is electric flying. As you can see here, there's a wide range of emissions from aircraft that contribute to global warming and pollution. Changing to electrical propulsion will actually eliminate all but one of these, which is near-ground emissions. While jumbo jets are still flying on jet fuel, several small aircraft have already demonstrated and proven that electric flying is possible. However, it's been shown that this is only possible for short-range flights, as the battery technology still has limitations today. However, with the anticipation of battery technology developments, specifically in energy density, we want to look into other obstacles which are preventing the electrification of aviation today. Seeing that all short-range flights are up to 500 kilometers, they make up about 30% of all flights. So how are you going to prepare for the electrification of the 30% of flights? The key factor we identified was the infrastructure necessary, which will also help decrease the near-ground emissions from near-ground operations. As we also found that this was very important beyond the aviation sector in other electrical vehicles, such as cars. Sustainable energy production and peak power demand are the two main concerns when talking about infrastructure development.
So let's dig into that a bit more. We'll start with sustainable energy production. To put things into perspective, the average electric car has a battery pack of about 70 kilowatt hours. If we replace all local flights with electric ones, we expect that each aircraft would require a battery pack with at least 23 times this energy. Now, where this energy comes from is really important because you cannot claim to be zero emissions if all you're doing is moving your emissions from the exhaust of the aircraft to a smokestack somewhere else. So currently, these local flights produce about 310 kilotons of CO2. If you replace this fleet with a purely electric one, and you charge these electric aircraft in the Netherlands, you can theoretically reduce the emissions to only 67 kilotons. However, if you charge that same fleet with energy from the Netherlands, your emissions will actually increase by 60 kilotons. So there's very big regional differences here. And this is mainly caused by where your energy comes from. These are the main sources of energy in Europe. And the main takeaway I want you to have here is that not because something is technically renewable or it has bio in the name that it's therefore also zero emissions. If we take a closer look at a breakdown of where the energy comes from in both France and the Netherlands, we see that the reason that France does so well in the emissions department is because most of their energy comes from nuclear power. The Netherlands, on the other hand, is still lagging behind here because they still mostly rely on fossil fuels. So there is definitely work to be done there. Then the other part of the equation is peak power demand. Now, again, comparing with cars, the average supercharger can charge at about 150 kilowatts of power. Again, we estimate that if you replace your fleet with electric, but you want to maintain that 1 hour turnaround time each time, you would need to have at least 11 times this power to charge your aircraft. For this, you need some kind of charging strategy in place because this is a very high power demand and it would be very unfortunate if you plug in your aircraft to charge and down the street the lights go out. Also, looking at power demand over time, you see that there's clear peaks and drops in power demand. Now imagine you come home at night, this is when the peak already happens, everyone starts to charge up the electric car that they just got, but then on top of that, your local airport also plugs in all of their aircraft to charge. Like this can totally overload the grid, cause melting cables, or your local power plant blows a fuse. Now, one solution for this could be battery swapping, which instead of immediately charging your aircraft as you need them, causing these large peaks in power demand, you simply replace the batteries in them. And this allows you to charge your spare batteries at a much lower consistent power over a longer period of time. And as you can see, this stabilizes and reduces the load on the grid. So electric flight to be possible, and while we anticipate these better battery technology, we really need these three parts to come together. So while we wait for battery technology, make sure we have sustainable energy sources available, and we have some kind of charging strategy and policies in place to avoid things going wrong when everyone starts charging their vehicles at the same time. Because remember, the Wright brothers, they only flew for 12 seconds, but a decade later we had commercial flight. We already have electric airplanes flying right now, so the change is coming, and I know we're ready for it, but the question is, are you? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Alun and to Cornéel for that very interesting and very clear outlook on electric flight. We now go to the team working on hydrogen-powered aviation. It's a pleasure to welcome the team presenters, Elisabeth Yahilo and Gopal Kandior, both also students at TU Delft. Please come to the stage and share your findings. And again, please do so in 5 minutes or less. Thank you so much.
Hydrogen aviation will be a part of our future. This is a fact. The question remains, how do we do this in the safest, fastest, and most efficient way? We as young engineers will be the ones to implement hydrogen in aviation in the future, and we need you to set us up for success. So, are you ready for it? We've heard about electric flight already, and it can cover a segment of the market. However, a large section of aviation is still hard to electrify today. Hydrogen is an ideal option for transporting a moderate amount of passengers for ranges of a few thousand kilometers. This covers most intra-EU flights. And this range is also expanding as hydrogen technology develops. So, how do we accomplish this? We'll look at a few action areas, production and infrastructure for hydrogen, and also some factors to catalyze this, financial incentives and regulations. When will hydrogen in aviation become a reality? If we are to hit net zero emissions by 2050, the time to act is now. And this progress needs to happen in parallel on both sides of the supply chain, in green hydrogen supply and also in the end-use sector of aviation itself. Accounting for the growth in aviation, we will need to significantly amp up our production of green hydrogen to cover all European flights by 2050. If all flights in Europe today were to be powered by hydrogen, we estimate that we would need to use 50% of our renewable energy production for this. If we are to allow for this change by 2050, we will need to increase the installation rate of solar and wind power by 10 and 12% per year compared to 2021. It is important to have incentives for investment into these technologies. So, tenders for the production of hydrogen and the production of green electricity are an option, as is subsidizing the use of hydrogen as a fuel. Taxing kerosene is an option, but only if you make sure that this money goes straight back into the aviation sector and is invested into hydrogen and green technologies. Finally, we can look at degrowth. How many ground wind turbines do you think it takes to power one hydrogen intra-EU flight? 1, 5, 100? Well, it is a whopping 50 ground wind turbines to produce that hydrogen. That's a lot. So we have the option. Do we keep constructing thousands of new wind turbines, or do we realize that boundless growth is not always the answer? If we have the Thalys, why do we need 8 daily flights from Amsterdam to Paris? We can help the implementation of green hydrogen aviation by reducing the amount of unnecessary flights, making sure that every flight that takes off today provides value.
Thank you. Having looked at the upstream supply chain with regards to energy production and electrolysis, we believe that existing support frameworks for these two stages currently allow them to develop at a pace faster than other elements of the supply chain. We believe that the fact that energy generation and electrolysis support the global energy transition in a wider context also mean that there's much more interest from various industries. Moving further downstream, if we look at liquefaction technology that is still in its infancy at scale, we believe that it's the role of authorities and policymakers to provide stakeholder engagement and engage in discussions to allow liquefaction plants to benefit from economies of scale by using multiple off-takers from the same plant, as an example. Moving to transport and storage, we believe that standardization from an operational perspective is of key importance, as this will enhance the speed at which hydrogen aviation can take off across the EU and hopefully globally. Finally, from an airframe perspective, we believe that there needs to be increased funding, public support, but also incentives for innovation to increase the speed at which these hydrogen aircraft will enter the market. Moving to the airports. The airport environment is one of the critical environments when it comes to the uptake of hydrogen aviation. We believe one of the first pillars that needs to be considered is the interaction of the airport with the upstream hydrogen supply chain. There, we believe that storage and safety, as well as production of hydrogen, are going to be critical. Particularly safety, where regulations and regulatory bodies will need to work together to establish common standards with regards to the treatment of hydrogen, as well as the storage and processing. Secondly, airside operations. This may vary more on a case-by-case basis depending on the airport with regards to scale and volume of hydrogen. However, operations once again need to be standardized to ensure that there are no bumps on the road to hydrogen aviation. Finally, finance and regulation. Developing the business case for an airport to set up a hydrogen supply chain is, of course, very important. This may be done on a case-by-case basis, but we believe an overarching roadmap identifying KPIs will allow us to benchmark and effectively monitor the progress of hydrogen aviation in Europe and eventually the world. So, to make hydrogen aviation a reality, we believe there are 3 key pillars. The first is the supply chain. The second is involving and developing airports. And the third is production of green hydrogen at scale. So, we believe that the EU is well posed to benefit from its technological progress and the advanced level of research in the EU on hydrogen technology, but we would like to ask you the question, are you really ready for the hydrogen transition?
Thank you so much, Elisabeth and Gopal, for that very, very interesting presentation. Please stay here. And dear teams, please, all of you now, please join us here on stage. So all the members of Team Electric and all the members of Team Hydrogen. And in the interest of time, I am not going to introduce you all individually now. What I am going to do is ask the audience who has one question for Team Electric, and we will also take one question for Team Hydrogen because we are running behind, but I definitely want to give you the chance to interact with our young talents. So, question for Team Electric? Anybody? Go ahead. Do we have a microphone? Great. There you go. Do tell us who you are, please.
Gregory Bartholomé, NG Hydrogen. I was wondering if you combine both your solution, whether we solve it. Have you thought about that? Have you discussed about possible combination? Thank you.
Okay, that's actually a kind of a question to both of you, but we're just going to take it really quickly. So first of all, Team Electric, what do you say? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this was actually one of the first remarks we made, was that we thought it was a shame that the two were split up, because batteries and hydrogen, they actually complement each other quite well. So combining the two in a hybrid solution would be ideal.
I think we'd just like to reiterate what Team Electric said. I think one of the first things we mentioned as Team Hydrogen was that hydrogen, electric flight, and SAF will be very complementary to each other. So I think we will solve a large part of the problem with electric and hydrogen, and I think eventually as hydrogen grows, we will also be able to transition out of SAF or towards more sustainable SAF.
Thank you very much. There's that holistic view that's clearly going to be absolutely crucial. One more question I can take. Go ahead, please. Can you put your hand up again so our microphone lady sees you? Thank you.
So my name is from KLM. One of the key drivers of our costs is, of course, the aircraft themselves and the kerosene, or then in this case the hydrogen or the electricity that we use. Another key driver is, of course, maintenance to aircraft. Have you thought about how your inventions and using hydrogen electrical aircraft will change the maintenance activities, costs, etc. Of our business?
So if like normal jet engines aircrafts are going to be used with hydrogen, I mean jet engine fuels, sorry getting to it, like the jet engine is going quite of the same maintenance, I think. The other part is going to be the storage system, which is really new. And another problem with the hydrogen is going to be if we use fuel cells, and the membrane here, the chemical membrane in the fuel cell, they are key for maintenance. That's a problem right now, and that's where research need to grow to try to extend their lifespan.
Thank you. That was Joseph Risson from Team Hydrogen. And over here, anybody?
Thank you. So when we talk about electric and hydrogen aircraft, so then there's a call for new aircraft designs. And so if we talk about the DEP, so that will have smaller engines and we'll have electric motors, so that substantially would reduce the maintenance costs because there would be less rotating parts than compared to a conventional IC aircraft. And so these new solutions might actually help us to reduce some of the costs associated with the conventional IC aircrafts, per se.
Thank you so much. That was Harsh Anup Singhal from, as you saw, Team Electric. And I know all of us have many more questions we'd like to pose. Perhaps we can catch up with you during the break or the reception and ask you some more things. But now I would like to ask the members of the jury to please join me on stage. And I would now like to introduce Stefan Korneef. He is Counselor for Innovation, Science and Technology at the Dutch Embassy in France, and he is speaking on behalf of his two other jury members, Jean-Jacques Pierrat, the French Foreign Ministry's attaché for scientific and academic cooperation in The Hague, and also Rob Postma, who is CEO of Airbus Defence and Space Netherlands. And Stefan is now going to tell us both what the winning team can look forward to in terms of an award and who the winning team is and why. Please, the floor is yours, Stefan.
Thank you very much. And as you see, we were still discussing because it's very, very difficult to pick a winner because both the presentations, the analysis is very complementary to each other. So first of all, a big thank you from both my colleagues on the jury for all your time and effort in preparing this in France. An excellent cooperation between France and the Netherlands. 2 teams, and I can already announce you before we say the winning team, is that all of you will receive an award. That is a visit to the Netherlands, the NLR, one of our prominent research institutes in the Netherlands, and a visit to GKN Fokker. So that will be a combined visit on one day, to be confirmed a date in the first quarter of 2023. So that's for all of you. And then we have a second award for the winning team. It's an extra for 5 people to have an electric flight from the Dutch airport of Teuge in the Netherlands to go into the air with your electric plane. And also you will be prepared and really see in practice what that will mean. But now, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, we thought it was a very difficult choice. I could also ask my colleague Jean-Jacques to come on stage with the 2 certificates. But we made the choice for the winning team on hydrogen. So congratulations. Who can I hear to you? Very welcome. And just very shortly, because once again, you guys were both excellent teams, very complimentary, looking at the analysis you made on batteries, on the hydrogen, and especially looking into the energy that's needed. That was all very, very concrete, very thoughtful for us. At the end, we also liked the example you took with hydrogen, referring to the short flights that you can replace with hydrogen with the Thalys, for example. So that was also an added value. And also, we liked your call to regulators to do something on hydrogen, and same, of course, with batteries. So very difficult choice, but congratulations to both of you. And we'll now see a little short video on the award on electric flying. Thank you so much.
You ready was the question that you had asked us, but this is either your reward or your punishment, that in fact you will apparently spend 45 minutes piloting that little plane, and it is not a simulator. So I think we wish the winning team an electrifying flight, and we wish all of you young talents a great visit to GKN Fokker and NLR, and most especially great success in your future endeavors. Let's give them a very warm round of applause once more. And ladies and gentlemen, we now stay with, or in fact return to, the theme of electric flight. As mentioned earlier, 27 years is not a long time in a hard to decarbonize sector like aviation. So the aviation industry's historic agreement to reach net zero by 2050 does mean accelerating action now, and we heard that in the first presentation. Our keynote speaker is part of a company that is doing just that. He is Chief Financial Officer at Fly with Lucy. And it bills itself as Europe's first all-electric airliner and plans to offer its first electric flights from Eindhoven Airport in 2025. And Transavia has already said it's on board. It announced this fall that it will invest with Fly with Lucy. So please join me in welcoming Arno van Hevel.
Thank you for this introduction, Melinda. I'm afraid the majority of my slides can be dismissed as they've just been covered here. I do have to say that the challenges that you raised, I wrote them down, we acknowledged those, and we're already working on those. Secondly, I was fortunate enough to take that e-flight experience, and it's a blast. It's amazing. So you guys are very fortunate to do that. Now, it's an honor to be here today. A special thanks to the Dutch Embassy for inviting us. My name is Jarno. I'm the CFO and part of the founding team of Lucy. And as Melinda just mentioned, we are Europe's first all-electric airliner. And we founded Lucy with one single mission, and that is to accelerate the advance of sustainable aviation. Now, the industry is facing two challenges, we believe. The first of all is the broken customer experience. The industry is facing post-COVID challenges, and we all remind the endless queues at Amsterdam Airport, for instance. Now, what we see with a regional short-haul trip is that the majority of the travel time actually pertains to waiting times. Secondly, it is unsustainable. And as has been mentioned already a couple times, we need to reach net zero by 2050. So now we are at the dawn of a breaking new technology, which is called battery electric aviation. And that is going to give us two enormous advantages, of which the first one, obviously, it is sustainable. Noise pollution is going down by as much as 50%, and we're not talking any longer about any tailpipe emissions. Then secondly, and I believe that was touched upon already as well, the economics of electric aviation are significantly better, and operational costs are predicted to go down by as much as 40%, which is mainly driven by, on the one hand side, lower maintenance costs, and on the other hand, favorable pricing of electricity compared to kerosene. Now, with that all in mind, how is that going to translate into the proposition of Lucy? Imagine booking a flight with Lucy as you book an Uber. Intuitive, seamless, easy, and with just a few clicks. Now, the Lucy proposition can be broken down in three parts. The first part is the digital experience. Our team is extremely focused to create this unrivaled digital experience. And that is not only with making the reservation in the app, but that app is going to last with you throughout that journey. Then, secondly, is our first and our last mile. Lucy is going to offer an integrated first mile pickup and a last mile drop-off service. So what does that mean? We're going to pick you up from either your home or your office and bring you to that airport. And what is that mainly going to facilitate? We can control the arrival of you at the airport. So we can determine and we can facilitate that smooth transition for you at the airport. Now then the third part, we're getting you to that airport perfectly well timed. And we're going to get you from curb to cabin in less than 10 minutes. And there it comes. This is the biggest part of the experience, obviously. We're going to get you with the aircraft from our French partner, Voltero, who's present here today. They're building a beautiful, beautiful, clean sheet design, all-electric airline. And we're going to get you with their aircraft to your final destination. From there on, we're going to pick you up and bring you to your end destination. And all that is going to create a sustainable and efficient, but mostly a very comfortable way of travel. Now, what this slide depicts is a comparison of the existing airport infrastructure of Europe. On the left-hand side, you see the airports that are currently in use for commercial passenger travel. On the right-hand side, you see all the existing airports in Europe. And this shows the enormous unlocked potential. There are so many underutilized airports all over Europe that we can use. And what we are going to do is we're going to operate point-to-point flights from regional underutilized airports. Now, it is hard not to make this comparison, but we have been here before. The car industry is currently in it, and they're doing well to transition into the electric vehicle. And we are facing enormous challenges, and I feel by now it's time to put theory into practice and start working together as an industry, as an ecosystem, to overcome the challenges that we face. Thank you very much for your time here.
Jano, thank you. Thank you so much. 2 super quick questions with a request for quick answers, if I may. First one relates to something that we heard, in fact, from the Young Talents teams, who said, for short haul, we should all be thinking about whether we really need to take that flight or whether we could take rail. And certainly you're talking here about short haul business travel largely as your entry strategy. Why should people take your plane and not get on a train?
Yeah, we get this question a lot. So let's be very clear. Lucy strongly supports the train, and we feel that if there is a train connection which works well, if that's close to you, please use it. It's as sustainable as it gets. It's already there. Please utilize that. However, so France is in a very luxury position. They possess like the best high-speed rail network of Europe. But the rest of Europe is not as fortunate as France is. So I experienced it myself this morning, and it's perfect, it's beautiful, it's fast, it's sustainable. But it's not everywhere. So if there's a train, please use it, but we are complementary to that train and not as a substitute of it.
Thank you. Then one more, if I may. You obviously are betting on battery electric as the solution. So how do you see both SAF, but also hydrogen? Are they also part of the picture?
Yeah, that's a difficult question to us, and that remains to be very difficult. So we founded Lucy with that mission to accelerate the advent of sustainable aviation, and that could be battery electric, hydrogen, or SAF. And to that end, we very much welcome any kind of investment that supports that cause. And to that end as well, there needs to be more investments to support sustainable aviation. We have been doing a lot of research, and to our proposition and to regional air mobility specifically, we feel that battery electric is most suited as that solution. And primarily for 3 reasons. First of all, it is truly sustainable. Secondly, we're being forced off here. We're getting closer. So first of all, so the technology is there. It is truly sustainable, and it operates at positive economics, like the lower cost that it has. So for us, for regional haul travel, battery electric is perfect. We do acknowledge, obviously, if we're talking medium and long-haul flights, SAF and hydrogen are going to be the solution. So effectively, it's going to be the combination of all these efforts that's going to bridge that gap. And we shouldn't be fighting over here on this stage, being is it going to be battery electric or hydrogen? It's going to be all 3, and it's going to be getting us to net zero. It's not going to be one of those.
There's that holistic view again. Please give him a very warm round of applause. Jano van Heuvel, all the best. Ladies and gentlemen, we move on now to our first panel. And it is entitled French-Dutch Cooperation in Zero-Emission Aviation. And we've touched on some of the challenges involved in transitioning to zero-emission aviation. Sorry, this is the moment where I wish I had a headset. Now we want to explore them in more detail, looking at both the societal, economical, scientific, and technological aspects of how we achieve this moonshot goal, and also how bilateral cooperation helps us accelerate the transition. We have an absolutely outstanding group of stakeholders with us. May I ask them to please join me now on stage, and I will introduce you when you are up here. And I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to ask you to go in more or less in alphabetical order. So if we could have Nicolas Bellouin at the left-hand side of the stage, if you'll go over there. Then next to him is Vincent Echebeher. Yeah, okay, great, you got it. So now, very quick introduction of our panelists, if I may. Nicolas, over on the left, is the chair of aviation and climate at the Sorbonne University, and he's also served as lead author of the 6th assessment report of the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. Welcome to Nicolas. And next to him is Vincent Echebeher. He's VP of Sustainability and New Mobility at Air France, and he has been at Air France KLM for the past 16 years, also helping to shape the airline's sustainability strategy. Welcome to you as well. Arjen Landman is Senior Vice President, Business Jets, Aftermarket and Urban Air Mobility at HAGN Fokker, and it is undertaking very significant investment in facilities and research projects with the aim of becoming a major player in the transformation of aviation. Next to him is seated Michel Peters. He is General Director of the Netherlands Aerospace Center. You heard it mentioned earlier, NLR. The young talents will be visiting it as part of their award. And it is the third largest aerospace research center in Europe and one of the leading technology institutes in the Netherlands, with sustainable aviation a core part of its mission. Welcome to you. And finally, next to me, Rob Postma is Chief Executive Officer of Airbus Defence and Space, Netherlands, with responsibility for the operational management of the Leiden-based company, which supplies high-tech products and services for international aerospace. And just a week ago, Airbus and other industry partners carried out the world's first sustainable aviation fuel flight by an in-service military aircraft, I saw to my great interest. Gentlemen, before we begin, we have a super tight window, as you know. I'm sorry to keep harping on this topic, but I would be very grateful if you would keep your answers to 2 minutes roundabout. So I'd like to begin with where we are at the moment and where we need to go. And I'll ask Nicolas to give us a bird's eye scientific perspective, as it were. Industry experts, and we've heard it already, predict widespread deployment of hydrogen-powered aircraft by 2035. Would you say that timetable is overly ambitious, just about right, or perhaps too optimistic? Sorry, not optimistic enough.
In my view, it's a fairly optimistic timescale. When we look into the future with climate models and we run different scenarios, we tend to work in the assumption of a very optimistic timescale of 2030s, 2040s, all the way to more pessimistic timescales going to the 2080s and end of century. So that's what we do. We try to model and represent different futures, so we are interested in more in a range of possibilities.
What would you say are the absolute major gaps or the major challenges that have to be overcome? Briefly.
So I see three kinds of barriers, of obstacles. The first one has been mentioned many times is the technology, so the aircraft, the airport, so that's all the engineering side of things. The second barrier is the availability of green hydrogen in sufficient quantities, knowing that aviation will not be the only customer for it. There's a long queue for that combustible. And the third barrier is the non-CO2 effects. So CO2 is only one way that aviation impacts climate. We know that hydrogen-powered aircraft will form contrails, but we don't know how different they will be from contrails with kerosene. We know that nitrogen oxides will remain a problem, but again, we don't know by how much. So there's plenty of scientific research going on those issues in France, funded by the French Civil Aviation Authority, in the Netherlands, at TU Delft, and we all work together in Horizon 2020 projects.
And I want to come back to the topic of collaboration and stakeholder interaction in a moment. But let me go over to Rob Postma now, if I may. Airbus, as I mentioned, does have its own very ambitious zero-emission program. We also heard that from Wouter van Wersch a little bit ago. Tell us your sense of that timetable. Do you think 2035 is a realistic perspective, or would you say there are major obstacles?
It's on. 2035, as Wouter just indicated, is tomorrow. I remember a discussion that we had. Actually, it was in the French embassy in The Hague, also on sustainable aviation. And then we had the question when we were talking about, let's say, the future plane in 2035, saying that's very, very far still, huh? And then we say, well, very, very far. In 2035, you need to fly. So you need to have it, let's say, fully certified. Certification of a plane, 4 years, 5 years. You need to have an early flight, let's say, somewhere in 2030s. So I think that you need to schedule the design of the plane in 27, 28 at the latest. That is really tomorrow. So there is a lot of pressure on it in order to get there. And again, as what Wouter indicated before, it was a bold move in order to let's say, get the ball rolling. Because, I mean, if Airbus didn't do it, it will become, another Kodak. I mean, we see everybody really going there. So we really needed to take this step. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Over to Vincent Etchebeher, if I may. And I mentioned that Air France KLM also has set itself quite high sustainability goals. You helped shape that trajectory, so perhaps you can give us the really thumbnail version of it. But also tell us about the challenges you see in boosting Dutch-French cooperation, because it's been mentioned that this is key, and clearly a shared airline is a big asset. But where do you encounter bottlenecks?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I will try to be short because I could spend 2 hours to answer this question. First of all, as you might know, as a lot of you know, hydrogen benefits and usage are double for the aviation. You can use them for hydrogen combustion or fuel cells, and it will be an instrumental lever for Air France KLM to reduce our short and medium haul operations emissions. But then they can also be used, hydrogen can also be used to produce SAF in power to liquid family. And that's actually our #1 priority as Air France KLM, because 80%, 80, of our emissions on Air France KLM are located on long haul operations. So SAF will be the #1 lever very soon to decarbonize our emissions. And within SAF, as you might know, the production today is concentrated on biomass-based SAF. We know that we will be facing strong difficulties or constraints in terms of availability, hence the absolute necessity for us and for the industry to rely also on power to liquid, so SAF produced from CO2 capture and hydrogen, and this hydrogen must be green in order to meet the CO2 emissions reductions. And so the 2 main challenges clearly for us on that is, first of all, to scale up production of SAF, in particular of PTL, power to liquid especially. And the second will be the economical equation, because today power to liquid SAF are 6 to 8 times more expensive than kerosene, than fossil kerosene. Hence the need for direct or indirect supportive mechanism in order to bridge the cost gap between kerosene and PTL.
Thank you very much. And let me now go to GKN, FOCA, and also NLR, because both of you were, or both of your organizations were part of that innovation mission that we mentioned that went to Toulouse this past summer under the auspices of the Netherlands and France's overall aim to establish an innovation pact. So I'd like to ask both of you to talk a little bit also about the challenges that we are facing in international and especially in bilateral cooperation when it comes to innovation in the area of sustainable aviation. I'll begin with Arjen Landman.
Okay.
Good afternoon, thanks for having us. So the mission of GKN Fokker is to be the most sustainable partner and trusted partner in the sky. And I think the key here is partnership. And I think for us, the partnership in the Dutch ecosystem, working with the knowledge institutes, the universities and the Dutch government is key. Working together with OEMs, because by the end of the day, the product will determine the sustainability solution, not only the innovation. And that journey has been a difficult journey sometimes, because as mentioned before, we are organizations who want to make a profit. We need the profit to invest ourselves. And that balance and that journey, I think we can do a little bit better from our side, but also from the other side. So the partnership and working together, allowing each other to be on a product and not having an endless debate on IP, on anything else, I think that is the mission to go.
Michel Peters, NLR.
I'm not so sure, good afternoon everybody, I'm not so sure if there are a lot of challenges currently in place, and I'm now talking about fundamental research slash applied research, which I'm representing right now. I think we all quite know what we have to achieve. That's the good part. There's no discussion anywhere that Sustainable Aviation 2050, that's what we are going to do, no discussions about it, etc. What we want to do, from our point of view, I would say, to get all those innovations into a production-ready aircraft. That's what we have to do. And it was mentioned by my colleagues, of course, nobody's talking about safety, but of course a hydrogen-powered aircraft has to be as safe as a normal powered aircraft. And if some of you will have that numbers, that would be 10 to the -9 failure rate. So 1 hour flight, in 1 billion hour flight, only one accident can happen. So you have to do a lot of innovation and engineering in order to make that happen. And I would say that's the most challenge, to have all those good innovations which are tested in laboratories, which are experimental right now, to get it production ready in an aircraft.
Let me now ask all of us to turn and focus on solutions to the challenges. And I know that not all the solutions are in place, clearly, or we wouldn't be talking about the challenges. But if you can give us a sense of what you are doing individually and how you are working with other stakeholders to address these challenges and where you see promising initiatives and solutions, that would be great. And Nicolas, if I can come back to you and ask you about the money side of it all, because clearly massive investment is going to be required to fund both research and project development to decarbonize this sector. Both France and the Netherlands have pledged sizable contributions by their respective national growth funds. How would you say, from your bird's eye perspective, that those funds should be most effectively applied to address the challenges?
So I'm just going to take the climate science view here. So here our questions that we have to answer is, are all the solutions offered by the industry, do they translate into a reduction of the climate impact? That's the main questions that we have to answer. And there's a lot of activity in there, funded by national agencies like civil aviation authorities, funded through the European Horizon and CESAR schemes. And you know, in science, you don't want to have just one voice, right? You want to get several answers to get an idea of the uncertainties and also the robustness of the results. And that's why it's so important that all those national and European level projects and even international in some cases exist and in parallel.
So what you're telling me is generating data, but also ensuring that the data gets fed back to those who can put it into effect in development and also in implementation. Do you think that the cooperation between scientific and research stakeholders with both policy and industry is strong enough?
It is certainly stronger than that is used to be. We are talking to the industry on a very regular basis now, something that didn't perhaps happen a decade ago. So it's going in the right direction. So you mentioned that's so it's scientific support to the solution, but there's also the question into the future of the verification and the estimate of the climate impact and to check that that climate impact has been reduced.
And we'll pick up on that, by the way, in our second panel where we're going to talk about norms and standards. But let me go over to Michel Peters with a similar question. And from NLR's point of view, how you see the key levers for boosting action, for accelerating action, and where you think that stakeholder collaboration is especially essential.
Okay, let me, that's a bit the Netherlands. We have a policy from the Dutch government called the Golden Triangle.
Mr. Peters, 1 second, because I'm not hearing your microphone. Is it on?
Okay, we try again. Okay, in the Netherlands we have a policy called Golden Triangle, where fundamental research, applied research, and industry work closely together. I think that's a golden triangle, as it's called. That can be enlarged, of course, to a more European scale. And basically, that's the essence of what we are doing here, right? Because both of the universities of France and the Netherlands are working together. That's also the case for applied research organizations like NLR, because my colleague in France is Onara. He couldn't be here, but we are working with my French colleagues for many years, and that's the case for basically all the European NLRs in Europe, and they are boosting the innovation to get a more innovative product, which basically it's not a question if you can do it, it's a license to operate. Zero emission, I think in 10, 20, 40 years or whatever, you are not allowed to fly in a normal powered aircraft. So that's the way we try to accelerate that.
Thank you very much. Let me ask our industry speakers now to tell us whether they see any silver bullet out there. Is there one holy grail that if you could solve it, the whole picture would change? And if there is, what stakeholders could drive that? Who really needs to be at the forefront? Rob Postma?
Yeah, I would come back a bit to what we said in the beginning. It's the collaboration. You just mentioned it. I mean, it's this collaboration that we really need to gear up with. When I look at it from a practical point of view, for me it would mean Airbus in the Netherlands, when we talk about, let's say, France and the Netherlands, is boots on the ground. With KLM and Transavia, we got a bit more traction of let's say, Airbus into the Netherlands. So that is an important one. So for me, it's really boots on the ground and making sure that you connect all the dots. And connecting the dots goes beyond, let's say, between the research institute. It has to do starting with the universities. I mean, are they, let's say, aligned with what the industry actually is looking on? Short term, long term. Remember, 28, we need to have a defined, let's say, new platform. Maybe on the university side, we're thinking 2050. So that's, I mean, but we need to start that now. The other element is basically with the Knowledge Institute together with the industries, bring that to the right level of TRL in order to make sure that you can apply it in a real platform. And here we need to really focus on our budgets. So the golden bullet is basically be aware of where we want to go. Make sure that we do really invest in the technology that's going to get on board of these new platforms. And this goes beyond the border. I'm looking at it on the Dutch landscape. We just indicated it, that we see this more international landscape, but I see this as dotted connections. Do we know in the Netherlands what all the programs are in France? Do we know in France what all the programs are in the Netherlands? Or do we invest in the same things? Do we have this on the right level of pictures? I think we can do a lot more there to have this kind of more transparency, basically, on putting the right dots there. Yeah.
Just because you were on the jury with the young talents and you mentioned university-industry interaction, what was your impression? You had your ear to the ground there with the young talents. Would you say they're working in directions that are important for industry?
Well, I think what you saw before is a nice thing. I mean, I've written it down because, yeah, we had, let's say, the one-pager before that. What you really saw on screen was a lot of hurdles. I mean, and how to go around it or how to tackle them. And you see that the regulation is a key element of that. So the government on this has to play a key role in there as well. I always also make, let's say, the link on we had it before. If with Airbus we fly into the Netherlands, and not on Teuge Airport, but on Schiphol with all their problems, and we land the plane in 2035, can it leave again? Can 5 planes leave again? Can a plane every 2 minutes leave again? I mean, this means it's not only on the technology side. A lot of brain power also from the students need to go into the whole supply chain and the network and the whole hydrology.
Infrastructure. Yeah, thank you very much. Vincent, let me go over to Vincent Echebeher. Same question. Silver bullet and stakeholders who can drive it.
First of all, I think that in the past years, there were tremendous progress in the convergence of vision among actors, industry actors, regarding the decarbonation roadmap, the key levers in order to fulfill it. And of course, I include Knowledge Institute and academic world on that. And of course, it should prompt us to go even further together. Second, I think, and especially talking about hydrogen, that it also opens the door to trans-sectorial approach. For example, creating a pool of demand, because we know that hydrogen will be absolutely key for the decarbonation of other sectors. And creating a common pool of demand could help scale up economies of scale, which would be, of course, beneficial to all. And I think, once again, a key role, of course, of regulation and EU cooperation must be noted in terms of defining policies, regulations, because we know for sure that in order to attract private investment, especially in the SAF production and in plants, PTL, for example, a stable, long-term policies and vision are absolutely key.
Thank you very much. Arjen Landman.
Yeah, so for us, the Holy Grail comes in steps. And basically, it's twofold. So on the application of hydrogen, we are following hydrogen burn versus hydrogen electrical power. So we are betting there kind of on 2 horses. Well, I think hydrogen burn might be a little earlier and power a little later. But also on the other side, we are trying to make the baby steps where we are actively participating in what's called eVTOLs, like electrical helicopters, mostly battery powered, which gives us the ability to develop our wiring harnesses, high voltage, high power solutions, but also the Thermo Plus solution. Next step will be small regional jets, 19-seater, where we will maybe have some hydrogen fuel cells, then stepping up to the 40 to 70-seaters, and then on our way to single aisle. So for us, the Holy Grail comes in steps. And on those steps, we collaborate with different parties. We are now in the exciting world of AAMs. They go as fast as we would like to be in the industry. They develop the turnaround times we have not recognized before. And we try to learn from that to apply that also in the development of single aisle solutions.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are unfortunately lagging on time, so I'm going to propose the following, that if you have a question for our panel that you would like to pose, that you try to catch them in the break or at the reception, so that we try to perhaps make up time a little bit. But I have a question for all of you, and then we're going to give them a chance to say yes or no after you show us what you think. I'd like to ask you, we heard about Fly with Lucy's plans to basically get an all-electric small plane up in the air within 2 years, in 2025. Who amongst you thinks that established players like those represented here on the stage could and should also be moving significantly faster? Raise your hand if you think so. Wow, okay. Who has pity on these established players and the enormous complexity of the challenges they're facing? So straight down the panel, what do you say when you see the overwhelming majority saying, hey, we need to speed up our game? Nicolas?
On the climate science side of things, we're working hard. The physics and the chemistry involved are complicated, and the atmosphere is a very variable place, so it's not easy questions, but we're working hard, we're working together.
Thank you. Vincent, one sentence, please, everybody, by the way.
Well, in the race against climate change, of course, time is of essence. So I think the big challenge, but at the end also, what makes this challenge extremely exciting is for industry to walk with two legs, preparing radical innovations in the years and decades to come, but also, and maybe most of all, to act now, to reduce our emissions now. That's exactly the objective of our 2030 very ambitious science-based targets, like Airbus objective. So yeah, the urgency is here. I fully agree with all the hands raised, and we are working actively on it.
Thank you. Arjen.
Yeah, so from our side, again, learning from those young startup companies who accelerate. I mean, just for reference, normally we did like 4 or 5 years to develop a wing. We did it now in 40 months on a flying prototype. That changed the thinking in our organization. So I'm totally with you. When we said first 40 months, everybody said it's impossible. When it's achieved, people are looking back and wonder why we ever took 5 years, right? So we should break the status quo and challenge ourselves.
Thank you. Michel?
Well, short answer, agreed, of course, but that's too short, I guess. Of course, we need to accelerate, but at the same time, we have to be a little bit realistic. I mentioned certification, failure rates, safety, because I think we all want that next generation aircraft will be as safe as the current ones. So as soon as possible, and the sooner the better.
Rob?
Yeah, Michel just stole my pitch line. In the sense that the main element is basically, yes, I think we should go faster on a lot of things, and I think we can go faster and do spin-ins, let's say, from what we see from startups, etc. But as it comes to a provider of an airplane, the main element is safety.
Thank you. That makes me very glad that we will be addressing certification later on in panel 2. So let's give them a very warm round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, as we touched on there, accurate data are absolutely crucial for defining both decarbonization goals and pathways to get to decarbonization, as well as for ensuring that both policy and corporate strategy are targeted and evidence-based. With us today, and we saw him, by the way, in the film that showed the young talents at work, is Dr. Junzi Sun. He's assistant professor at the TU Delft, and he's also principal investigator at its Aerospace Engineering faculty's Sustainable Aviation Lab. He researched environmental inefficiencies in short-haul travel, and he's going to tell us what he found out. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Melinda, for the kind introduction. I was told that I have to catch up with time, which is what we do all the time in aviation. So I'm going to speed up my presentation, which was designed for 30 minutes, and then 10 minutes, now 5. So what is Embassy Science Fellowship? So it is an initiative proposed by Dutch Embassy, encourage all the researchers to go aboard to contribute to scientific and social issues. Scientific issue for me is really a sustainability about the aviation. And I was relocated in France for 2 weeks. So the social issues is really how can I adapt to the nice food and wines in the Toulouse area. So this project is funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and also the Dutch Research Council, who actually supported financially and with their all the staff like Stefan, Marit, and Lucien, who helped me with all this project. Thank you very much for that. And also our dear partners in Toulouse, Isai Supero, Ronera, and INAC. So I was able to have 3 offices simultaneously at all 3 institutes. It was amazing. So, a little bit about myself. I'm Junzi Sun. Thank you very much for the Melinda for the introduction. So I'm doing a lot of research. There are 3 main research. First is about the data science and AI, how we can use data and AI tools to make better decisions for our transportation system. The second one is how we can optimize our current operations. So in terms of flight plans, flight trajectories, and how we can combine these two to make aviation more sustainable. So develop tools and use open data to assess the emissions of flights. For this research fellowship, there are 2 actually research questions we want to ask. You already know the second one. The first one is really about how much inefficiency we have in the current flights in Dutch and French airspace, for example. And the second one, can electrification really reduce emission? That's a question that I wanted to answer, and I do have some answers already. I was lucky enough to be able to access to a large amount of data thanks to the Eurocontrol, so provide this data as a kind of open data for the researchers. Those are the numbers, right? We have about 260,000 flights a year. Imagine that, between France and Netherlands. And a large portion of is actually under 500 kilometers. So those are the ones that our student team has been targeting. Fly with Lucy has been talking about. Those are the ones that maybe can be electrified. There's a lot of research going on. Feel free to follow the link to see a little bit more in-depth analysis of scientific reports. So those are the main conclusions we have. The first one is, yes, there is a lot of inefficiencies in this airspace, especially Dutch and France are one of the busiest airspace in Europe. There are many reasons because of this. So first, we have convective weather, so we don't want aircraft to fly through the thunderstorm. That's not what we want to do. But there are other factors. For example, airspace restrictions. With better managed between the military, special use, and civil aviation airspace, we could actually make this flow more sustainable. And then talking about controller capacity, every time I bring it out, people will say, yeah, Junzi, you cannot really reduce the controller capacity because reasons that we don't mention. But imagine that you're driving the car. Someone else is telling you, okay, you have to drive a speed of 80 kilometers per hour. Now you have to take a left turn. Now you have to take right turn, right? This is not the kind of thing that we're expecting for the ground traffic. Why can we make the air traffic controllers work easier by automation, right? And the other part is that airlines sometimes flies really not very sustainably because of time reason. They have to catch up with the time schedule, like what we do now. They also have to follow certain restriction airspace. So those are really the areas needing automations, regulations, and advocations from the policymakers. So those are the things that I really encourage you to look at it and also follow a little bit of our research at TU Delft. The second part is about electrification. I'm not going to go too much about it. The answer is very obvious. And what we really want to know is that there is going to be a lot of air traffic management problems because we need 10 times more electric planes to replace those short-range flights. That is impossible nowadays with all the air traffic capacities, controller capacities. So automation, again, is really important. And then we have really to look at the energy sources. If we want to halve the emission for those airplanes flying now under 500,000 kilometers, there's only a few countries can do that with that energy, the CO2 produced by the energy. The solution is actually very apparent, right? Reduce these flights, don't travel with planes, go with trains, higher automations, and also really we cause for transition to low carbon emission from all the countries. And then lastly, it's really a little bit about extension on this thought, right? So it's amazing that there was a question about if there's silver bullet. My answer is there's no silver bullet. It's really calls for a lot of transparency and emission and climate impact for the aviation. Why do I say so? Because there's been a lot of greenwashing in all kinds of industries, and aviation has just been given a second chance, by all these activists, by us, by researchers. So we really have to always ask the question, where does the energy come from? No matter if it's synthetic aviation fuel, or you're trying to fly hydrogen, ask a Q question. How much CO2 or emission you're producing by producing those sources? And remember, carbon offsetting is just not working, right? It's not gonna reduce any flight emissions. And the elephant in the room is that we're talking about growth. I mean, it's really nice from the industry perspective. As myself, a lover of aviation, it's sad to see that. But we have to be transparent with the industry that aviation is not a clean industry, at least as it stands now. So it will take decades to transition. Now we have to admit that, and we have to let the audience, public knows that, right? So we want to provide open data, open model to evaluate those emissions, quantify those emissions. That's what we do as a research university. And also we want to involve the passengers, make better choices, flight choices, non-flight choices, or less travel in general. So this is me. Having many nights, I cannot sleep, and I'm worried about my kids. I also have this worry because I did some calculations. Imagine now I stop producing all the CO2, not only aviation, but everything. Guess how much CO2 reduction we save? This is a tuning fork. I'm gonna use it as a time instrument. That's it. So this is what we can do per person by reducing our emissions. And that keeps me up because everything that we do and family do, and then really doesn't contribute to a perfect future for our kids. So, but when I wake up in the morning, I go to TU Delft, I meet with my colleagues, all the energetic students who are, and even some of the activists. I'm very surprised that there's no activists come in today, try to protest. Anyway, those are the people that actually give me hopes, gives me, motivations for my work. And finally, when I come to here, I think that we, as the policymakers, really can make an impact because you can reach to the greater audience. You can reach the greater population in Europe, even the world, right? So let's hope that resonance stays longer a little bit. With that, thank you very much. That's my presentation.
Junzi, thank you so much. I know we all wish we could have heard the other 22 minutes of that, but again, if you are interested in catching up with Junzi and hearing more about his work, please do so during the breaks. That was absolutely fascinating, and you certainly prodded us to think about the bigger picture. So many thanks for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we now go to a somewhat shortened break, but nonetheless, 10 minutes. Let's all grab a refreshment.